Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're literally picking up right where the last episode left off. Oh my god, there's so many aliens scattered across time, so what are we going to do? What we're going to do is we're going to track down one of these aliens, capture it, and then pump it for information about Sarah. So they end up finding out that there's an alien that landed in the 1950s. That basically there's like a particular burger joint, and that basically the entire town gets massacred. And it's like, oh, like Gideon says, like there's a specific name for like the massacre, and then Ava's like, no, I think this will sound better. And then Nate's like, save it for the podcast. You're like, right, I forgot about the podcast. How could I forget about Ava's like serial killer obsessed podcast? Oh my god. But nevertheless, I love it. It's like, once again, it's like, when do you have the free time to like record that podcast, considering all the heroing you do? I guess it's like in between episodes, in between adventures. Like, I think we've seen hints of her. No, I think like an episode gets played, and it wasn't well received amongst the team, if I remember correctly. But it's like, we haven't seen her actually record it. I would love this season for us to have an opportunity to see her actually record her podcast. I don't know, I just think it'd be kind of a nice little bit. But nevertheless, they land in the 1950s. The entire team's there, including Spooner. She's reluctant to be there, but obviously for Ava, it's like, we need you to communicate with the alien. But Spooner has to explain later on, like, she doesn't fully know how this whole thing works, because Bayrod has to explain, like, first he's like, well, I was going to talk to you about this. Gideon brought up the fact that there's nothing she can do about it. So, like, Spooner the entire time has been thinking like, oh, there's like a chip or something they put inside of her head where her powers come from, and like all this, but it's like, no, it's whatever it is, it's something Gideon can't pick up. So either they injected her with something or gave her powers, or we might be kind of floating down kind of a Nia path where it's like, maybe both, maybe one of your parents was actually an alien, you just didn't know it type of situation, because Nia went the entire time never knowing she was half alien. So that might be a potential outlet where they take Spooner's story, but we'll see. But the fact of the matter is, obviously, checking out the burger joint. I love that mix, like, checking out, like, all right, he's listening to the codes and stuff like that from the cops, and he's like, oh, I know what's up, like, there's been some stuff around town, so let's go check it out. Whereas, like, Nate, Zari, and Bayrod end up staying behind, because Bayrod's kind of obsessed with this, because for him, it's like, the mass production of, like, fast food kind of killed the mom and pop shop, and he, like, that's really important to him, because, like, one of his, like, early jobs was like at like, you know, working the grill at like a burger joint, and it means a lot to him. It was actually really interesting when he kind of brings up like why it was so important to him, because for him it's like it was a place that allowed him to kind of find himself, kind of identify himself. He wasn't just Zari's brother, he was able to be himself. Like it's like sort of taught him certain principles. So like he cooks burgers like with positive energy, and he's like, yeah, you don't want like that, your negative energy to kind of seep into the burgers. And I love later on he gives the burger to Nate. He's like, what would Nate, don't serve him that, don't taste my negative energy. Because the whole conversation came up about Zari saying like, oh, like the fact of the matter is I need to kind of put in my time with the totem as well, because I'm officially a legend and everything. So, you know, I need to kind of be practicing with it. You know, it's like, oh, but it's like, Bayrod's like, oh, it's actually mine. She's like, well, you actually stole it. It's like, well, it also depends on what timeline you, because like, well, technically it belonged, I mean, it was originally Bayrod's, but then it went to Zari because Bayrod in the original timeline died, so it became hers. I mean, and then it's like, well, now he's technically the rightful owner because Zari wasn't a legend in this continuity. She never got it, but Bayrod still stole it, but now it's a complicated thing, and it fits that. It's like, no, like, both of you kind of earn it. It's befitting that both of you end up having it. Because, I mean, interestingly enough, you both had it at different points in different timelines, so it's only, but nevertheless, but Bayrod's doing it. I love that Nate's like, he's thinking like, yeah, I think these shorts are a little too short because everyone just keeps coming back and sticking around. And later on when they find out it's like because of the alien sauce, he's like, oh, I thought it was because of my short shorts. And I was like, oh, Nate. But nevertheless, investigating, they end up finding out. I liked what Spooner was kind of initially thinking. It's like, oh, an alien disguised as a human disguised as an alien. Oh, these guys are smart. Because for her, she ends up explaining, like, her power, it's more like an empath ability. She's like, I know what the aliens are feeling. I can't communicate with them. But then later on, it kind of shows, like, oh, wait, I can't understand this alien language. That's why I think she's part alien. She doesn't know it. She's got such a resentment towards aliens because she thought she was kidnapped by aliens. But I think it might have been like her mom's people coming to claim her, because it's like, oh, maybe she's like, for all we know, she might be a criminal that's been on the run and she's been hiding out on Earth. She got married to a human, and, you know, once again, maybe something similar to Nia's situation. Once again, it's interesting. Like, this is all kind of like we're going full blown alien. I mean, to be fair, might as well, because this is his universe. I mean, the Dominators were one thing, and they were the only aliens we had previously experienced on Earth 1. But now it's a situation of, now that all the Earths have collapsed into one, at least most of the Earths have collapsed into one, it gives us an opportunity to bring all that Supergirl alien stuff into the fold here. So, I mean, that's also the crazy thing about too. It's like, right, there's a whole bunch of aliens running about on Earth already. Oh, dude, if Spooner found out, she'd lose her shit. I wonder how that's also a question. How she feel about Superman and Supergirl? They're a little bit different. Like, she's very anti-alien, but it's like, well, they're aliens, so how you feel about that? I don't know. That's just kind of interesting to think about. But, nevertheless, they go back and examine the dude, but like I said, he's just 100% human until Constantine uses his spell, and it basically makes him vomit up the sauce. It's like, yeah, get rid of all the negative stuff inside of him, and it turns out, oh, that negative stuff is the sauce, because the sauce itself is the alien. So it's like, okay, so now we gotta find it. It turns out they start gathering up all the sauce, because it's like, yeah, this is driving people insane, Bert. And Bert's like, well, it's my wife's secret sauce. Ava. Well, for one, I also love Mick literally pissed off in the episode. It's like he's just up here to kind of like do a couple of things and disappear. To be fair, that's always been Mick's thing. He doesn't always stick around for the action a lot of times. I'm like, did you just go back to the Wave Rider? It's like, we never saw you on a Wave Rider, but he just like pissed off. It's just like, it's probably like I'm sitting back, I'm drinking beer, but he'll throw out some like negative like Rory like isms, and he'll just be like, oh yeah, like we're one day closer to like Ava being dead, and she's like, Sarah being dead, and it's like, yeah, thanks Mick for contributing kind of nothing to it. It's like, I love that. It's just like, he does a little here and there. Like, I mean, once again, he's always done kind of like the most minimum amount of work amongst the legends. It's just kind of like I'm here for the ride. You guys got this handled, you know. Once again, he brought it up last episode in the premiere, kind of basically being like, we're kind of like, he doesn't say this necessarily, but the analogy still fits. It's kind of like they're like chickens with their heads cut off without Sarah. Sarah's the one that kind of like, she's literally the glue that keeps his team together, and she's the one that keeps it. Yes, they have their wacky ways of handling things, but it's their thing, and like, Sarah's able to kind of rein them in to a certain extent, you know? She knows how to, like, really, like, take charge of, like, this, like, ragtag group of misfits, you know? So, but, Spooner kind of goes off on Ava because it's like, you're so obsessed with saving your girlfriend, and it's like, the fact of the matter is she's gone, and, like, even Constantine was like, whoa, 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 and it's like, you need to just kind of accept it, you'd be kind of better off, and Ava makes her stay behind, which I love, like, Ava putting on, like, that 50 sounds, like, oh my god, like, oh, you know, I was like, oh, like, these ears are open and these lips are sealed or something like that, and it's just like, her getting close to, like, the wife, what's her name, Bert's wife, Rhonda, about the sauce and stuff like that, and because at first it's like, it doesn't make any sense, because like, you know, looking at it, it's like a giant air flyer, and it's like, that doesn't sound like a sauce monster, because it's like, how is that related? It seems like basically what we end up finding out is that basically the sauce is a cocoon, that basically and now it has this very addictive property, because I guess the point is like, oh, people to eat it, get addicted, get all fattened up. It's very like Hansel and Gretel to a certain extent. And so it can, like the witch was like, oh, like let me fatten you up so I can eat you. That's kind of like the purpose why, like, it's meant to make everyone kind of so obsessed, so it can go in, oh, they're fattened up, like, let me gobble up the whole town. That's kind of it. It's poor Rhonda. Rhonda's like, no, you can't tell. Because we find out, like, oh, it fell on my husband's food. He thought it was my special recipe. I tracked it down. It's like, the restaurant was suffering, and because the restaurant was suffering, so was our marriage. So it's actually like, oh, that's actually kind of sad. Like, so she was trying to, like, build their business back up, but also, like, save their marriage. So it's like, oh, it's actually kind of a sweet reason why she's doing it. And it's like, yeah, this thing is just going to get bigger and everything. It's like, right. We're not just going to take over this town. We're going to franchise out. You know, it's like, okay. You know, it's not like super villain, but villain-esque to a certain extent. But it's like, you kind of don't care what it's doing to people, as long as it's like, yeah, our marriage is better and our business is doing better. So that's what matters. Sadly, Rhonda ended up getting eaten. What I thought was really interesting is that the creature made, like, Godzilla noises. I was like, because I haven't watched the more recent Godzilla movie, the Godzilla King of the Monsters, nor Godzilla vs. Kong. but that's like the typical go-to Godzilla sound. That's why I was like, is that in like the public domain? That sound, is that kind of like, or did they have to pay for that? Which I thought was kind of interesting. To be fair, that's also the thing. Like I was thinking back on like referencing stuff that kind of exists under the same umbrella as you. Does that cost? I mean, you can freely, like, it's just like you can't show anything, but I guess you can mention it because it's like, yeah, they reference Mothra, but it's like, to be fair, that's under, like, are you more comfortable mentioning stuff like that? Like, I just thought about it, like, because it's like, well, they casually mentioned Marvel and Black Panther and Shuri and Wakanda and this week's episode of Batwoman. It's like, well, they didn't have to pay Marvel to make those references. Now, if they showed some Marvel stuff, they'd have to pay, but like saying it, I don't think that covers copyright. I guess I don't know. But once again, the real point I was bringing up is like, well, that sound, even if it's not under the public domain, it's under Warner Brothers because they own Godzilla and all that stuff. So even saying Mothra, it's like, well, yeah, that's under their umbrella, so they can say that because DC and stuff is under Warner. So it's like, I don't know. I'm always so curious about stuff like that, like what you can actually say in a TV show and what references and winks and nods you can make, like up to a certain extent, so that it doesn't cross over to being a full-blown copyright issue. I don't know, but at first I was like, oh, it's pretty dope that it's like, you know, it's like well, because at first there was like almost like a zombie aspect to the episode, which they cross paths with zombies already anyway. But like all the people being meat obsessed, and it's like, all right, we're going to use like Zari's like herbal stuff to kind of calm them down. So it's like, you know, it's like we're going to have to work together, and it's like, hey, you're not the Dragon Lady's brother now. I'm Burger Boy's sister. So it's like, yeah, he gives her the totem, and they work together to make it happen. They're feeding these people the burgers, and they're falling asleep. But ultimately, when it comes to dealing with the monster alien, it's like, well, for one, it ate Rhonda, and it immediately knocks Bert up. I was like, oh, I thought someone was going to save him. And at the last second, it's like, no, the monster came back and gobbled him. I was like, huh. So Rhonda, it's like, yeah, go ahead. And not Rhonda, Spooner ends up shooting it. It gets electrocuted, and it's like, huh. It was like, honestly, that was kind of a little, God, what was the word she used? She was kind of saying like, oh, that actually kind of felt kind of nice that be the end result. I was almost hoping like, oh, when it fell down, it's like, oh, we'd be able to cut them out of it. But it's like, to be fair, the thing that's electrocuted, if it hadn't already digested them and killed them when the moment it started chowing down on them, they're sure as hell dead now. Rhonda might be digested, but Bert isn't. And it's like, oh, once again, it's like, well, can't save everyone, I guess. It's like, they ended up being the only like two major victims of the episode. Poor bastards. And it's like, the lady kind of took over the restaurant and just turned it into the Big Belly burger place. So that works out. Another angle to the episode, well, really quickly, is Ava and Spooner kind of like bond a little bit. Because Ava's like, I know what it's like to have people mess with you. And I was like, there's many different ways you can interpret that, because it's like, well, the Fates last season did a lot of messing with people. What I would assume she was specifically referencing for the fact is of like being a clone, and also having it so that Rip basically implanted its entire life, because your entire life ended up being a lie because you're a clone. I mean, the C word, because she doesn't like that being brought up. But it's like, yeah, like I think that conversation could end up bringing her and Spooner together closer, because it's like, yeah, you've got your issues of, you know, your alien circumstances, situation, whatever it ends up being. Like I said, I think she's an alien. The fact that she can read alien and stuff like that, there's no clear sign of like why she has the empath ability that she does when it comes to aliens. I think it's just, she's just straight up an alien. I mean, because obviously those powers manifest differently, because look at Nia, like her dreamer abilities, you know, so. But regardless, for Spooner, it's like when she was younger, her mom and her were taken, and she just assumed she survived, but like she doesn't know where her mom is. So it was easier, because holding on to hope can be like, it's good, but until like also like it's also very depressing to hold on to hope, and it's easier just to kind of let go. So she didn't want to hold on to that hope, knowing that maybe I'd never find out what happened to my mom, and if I did, like I wouldn't like the answer. So that's when she was telling Ava that, she was kind of talking from personal experience in that regard. But also she thought like she wanted to get payback against the aliens, but the moment she killed that alien in this episode, she thought she'd feel something, at least feel better. And she's like, I didn't feel anything, like, because it's that thing of vengeance. Once I referenced this recently in something, I don't remember, I think it was something today I was referencing that, but it's like with vengeance in your heart, like once you kind of exacted your revenge, it's like, right, like the emptiness it was feeling was only temporary, because now that vengeance is gone, you kind of got nothing. So they're making a deal. It's like, well, Ava's like, but you have us, you know, we can teach you how to control your ability and everything. And Splinter's like, all right, we're going to find your girlfriend, fiance, but then, you know, and I'm going to go kill more aliens till I feel better. And Ava's like, that's not really the, all right, that's a deal. So there's that, Behrad, and, God, I'm blanking, Zari, God, I'm so terrible with names sometimes. I blink on stuff. Which I know, I love them, like, when they settled everything. It's like burger buddies, and all three of them came together like that. That was kind of dope. But it's a situation of, like, you know, Behrad's like, no, you were right. I've been kind of hogging, like, you know, this. It is kind of like a little bit of, like, a, you know, I shouldn't be hogging this because you are just as much a part of this as me. So, yeah, but for Zari, it's like, no, I need to start respecting boundaries. It is kind of yours, but it's like, no, it's yours too. And Zari on the inside, Zari 1.0, it's like, oh my God. All right, I've had enough. Snaps her finger and she splits it in two. So it's like, oh, borderline some Wonder Twin power type of stuff. So that's interesting. What was that? Was that Crisis? Which crossover was that? I want to say that had to be Crisis on Infinite Earths. They set up and winked to, like, what? Was that Crisis, or was that a different crossover? They have established that the monkey that's the sidekick to the Wonder Twins, because they don't exist in this continuity, I don't think. They haven't been brought up. I mean, technically they existed in Smallville. So that kind of brought them into the fold of this continuity, but obviously it was on a different Earth, so it doesn't really count. But, like, this specific Earth, the Wonder Twins don't exist, but that was kind of set up for the Wonder Twins, because, like, what's his name? Isn't his name, like, Gleek? The little monkey pal. I guess he's from the comics. Like, I've never, obviously not well versed in the comic, I just know him from, like, the old school, like, Super Friends cartoons. Was that it, with the Wonder Twins and stuff like that? But that's about it. But, it's interesting. I should also talk about it, too, because I think they talked about this at DC Fandom. I don't remember. The actress who plays Zari talked about it. I think there was an idea of keeping both Zaris around, which they still kind of have, but not to this capacity like it was in the previous season where they were two separate people. I think they just decided not to go down that route because they felt like it would have been too much, I think. I don't remember. Like I said, I vaguely remember they talked about it at DC Fandom of that being a potential idea, but they decided not to. Because I don't know whether they felt like, that would have been like too much to kind of ask, you know, the actress to do. Or there were extenuating circumstances. Or it was just like, maybe that was an earlier idea they had, but they decided not to go down that route. Once again, 1.0 is still there, just not in the same capacity. She's in the totem and everything. So it's like, like they just think like, like the totem decided to do this. Like, nah, like Zari made that decision. She just got access to the power of the totem and was able to kind of make that happen. So interesting development on that front. So there's that side of things. Then we focus on the Sarah and Gary side of things. We learned so much more about Gary this episode. For one, it's like, I thought you and Kayla were supposed to be engaged, and it's like, he's like, yeah, but she wasn't, big on, what we'd call communication. So it's like, all right, there's a dog outside, and I love Gary being like, all right, ignore the cuteness. You can't be fooled by a dog again. You're like, right. The demon dog you ended up bringing aboard and everything. Yeah, let's not forget about that, Gary. Let's not forget about that. But also, it's like, oh yeah, the planet and everything where you eat humans. He was like, yeah, I mean, I came from a very barbaric place. He almost made it sound like, yeah, they kind of ate each other too, or at the very least they killed each other. And he was like, yeah, like, it's like, but I came to Earth and it's like, yeah, I found this and friendship. And she's like, friends. I've known you for 3 years and I'm now just finding out you're an alien, Gary. We also learned, like, the reason why he took Sarah is because basically him and Kayla were hired to find, like, the most, like top class warriors. And he ended up picking Sarah, and it's like, because even Sarah, like, why me? And it's like, maybe the guy who hired us just wants enjoys badass women. Which I love that he's got, like, these cards of, like, historical women and stuff like that, like, and everything. So that was interesting, and he's kind of going through them a little bit. And I love Sarah being like, well, out of anybody, why'd I get stuck with you? So, obviously, Sarah's like, what did we talk about you talking, Gary? You were saying don't, but it sounded like there was some nuance in the way you saying that, so he figured there was going to be some wiggle room for it. But they follow the dog, and they end up upon a hut, and lo and behold, who they run into, Amelia Earhart. Was like, that's interesting. I would have expected them to cross paths with you time travel-wise, not on an alien planet. what? How did that happen? It's like, were you one of the people kidnapped too? It's like, okay. And then, like, once they talked to her and everything, she started acting weird. It's like, oh, we get our spacecraft and everything. She's like, oh, could I go home? It's like, yeah. And then she started acting weird about it. No, that's not go. Like, let me search your food first. And it's like, oh, you built all this and everything. Oh, the food was great. It's like, yeah. And then she starts repeating the line of like, oh, the last thing I remember, my partner Frank. And it's like, okay, they're like, okay, this is weird. Let's get out of here. And so it turns out she's an alien. Question is that Amelia Earhart was turned into an alien, or is it an alien that disguised itself as Amelia Earhart? Why? Maybe because it read Gary's mind and knew how obsessed. Like maybe it decided to take a form that it knew would resonate with Sarah and Gary, or maybe it's because once again we don't know what Spooner's circumstances are, so maybe it's something related to that. But also, like Sarah got poked with whatever that is, and it kind of infected her. We don't know what kind of effect that's going to have. And it's like Gary's kind of planning out her wedding. It's like rather than spring wedding, because of like what was it? Basically because of her was it like Norwegian features or something like that? It's like something of that nature. It's like maybe a winter festivity would be better. And he's like, Gary, come here. You're not planning my wedding, but honestly, a winter kind of thing would be actually really nice. It's like, oh. And so we see a whole bunch of lights nearby, and it's like, oh, he's hoping that's help, but it turns out maybe it's not. Maybe Amelia isn't the only thing on this planet. They don't really know. Once again, maybe it has to deal with all the gathered warriors, which we see that those are all scattered throughout time now. So I guess all of them got knocked out of the ship. I don't think there are any left on the ship. I mean, if there are, they're still in stasis. Well, you think because of the ship's condition. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But Gary was saying that this is the planet of the person that hired him. So I'm really interested to find out, like, is this supposed to be like a battle royale type of thing of, like, the greatest across the universe? Like, what if we're doing, like, borderline DBZ thing of, like, I haven't watched Super, but I know that, like, it's literally like, oh, yeah, like a battle for your planet survival type of situation. Or, no, a battle for your universe. So what if that's the case? It's like, battle of the planets. The winner makes sure that their planet doesn't get destroyed. We might be on like a borderline tournament type of thing, which would be crazy. I think that's a strong possibility of potentially where we can go down that route. But I'm really interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode with a lot of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love light to the force, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.